So the purpose of today, just to give you an overview as to how to try and promote the positive that you're all doing, how to manage out the negative, and to protect and build strong reputations. It's what we do as an agency. We're Kent-based. We have been since '95. Can't believe that I left school and went straight into work, obviously. We are a mix of journalists, public affairs, marketing professionals, and we all come together to sort of focus on the written word and how that is then communicated with the media, with stakeholders, with your customers, and also with your staff. So we've also got strong local knowledge, and also we work very closely with key regional stakeholders. For my sins, I sit on a number of boards and many an hour spent listening to reading reports. So moving on. Promoting the positive. We all know that preparation prevents very poor performance, and if you aren't prepared and you haven't got a plan, then you're failing and you're underperforming in terms of, I suppose, your business. So the first question I would then ask you is, do you actually have a plan? Do you know where it is? And can you actually put it into practice? And your PR and marketing plan is all about how you reach out and engage with your audiences. But today we're going to talk about PR, I think, in primarily. That's the focus. So when considering your PR, what you've got to think about is what makes you actually different from your competitors? What makes you stand out? Is it your experience, your team, where you are, your products, everything about you? And I would argue that every company has a story, small or large, that they can communicate to those people that matter, i.e. their customers and potential customers. So the question is, what works? And first and foremost, we need to think about what makes news. So I put up a slide here. It's not construction based, but it's a project I did for NIAB EMR over the old East Malling research based over, obviously, in East Malling. Strange that, because of the name. And this is a good example of what makes news. So what I had a briefing with the client, and we just happened to be talking about what research they were doing, what they've been up to, new products, new technologies, new techniques. And he said, oh yeah, by the way, one of our team has just captured the first ever brown marmorated stink bug in Essex. It's a first in the UK. And all of a sudden my ears pricked up because I thought, well, hang on a minute. It's a UK first of a capture. It's in Essex. It was using a pheromone sex trap, and we all know sex sells, especially when dealing with the press. It was the appliance actually of breaking. And also the ugly little critter there causes absolute havoc with top fruit and soft fruit. It's caused major problems in Spain, Italy, and also in America. So I had as I said, a UK first, damage, sex, science, and it also had a really strange and silly name. And so when you're talking to the press, so I then went on to draft the release, went through the approval process. So I drafted it, submitted it to the client. We talked it through that I got the right angles, and then it was then approved. I could then start to talk to the press. And the fact that I could talk about something with the name of the stink bug, it was like being a little boy back at junior school going, I've got a funny name I can talk to you about. And it was amazing the amount of take-up and the interest. It got the Mail, the Sun, the Telegraph. It also got Lad Bible. It was absolutely everywhere. And importantly, Farming Today. And Farming Today is NIAB EMR's most important media. It's the one that they want to be in because it's the one that they know their customers, their stakeholders, their industry listens to. And being in there was a massive positive for them. So that's what makes news. The clue is in the name. It is new. It is novel. It is different. It stands out in the crowd. And you've got to start thinking about, as yourself as a business, what can you do that makes news? Or what do you do that makes news? The other thing about what that works is that you need fundamentally to understand your audience, and you need to understand the media outlets that you have and you're aiming at. So if you're interested in just the Kent press, then think about who are the Kent business press. It's the likes of Thinking Business. It's the likes of, you will be glad to hear that if you actually used to read Southeast Business, that's actually now coming back. It's just been bought and will republish again in November. So traditionally, Kent has always had a very strong business-to-business publication and market. So, but it could be that it's your trade press. It could be that it's just a very local press. It may be that you're a Dover company and you actually want to be just in Dover. Again, it's every business is different and every business will have a different audience. The other thing to say is that pictures do sell the story, and increasingly most publications, many local newspapers do not have their own, well, most business publications don't have their own in-house photographer. So a photograph tells 1,000 words, and it's the old adage, it's true. So the pictures there are, the picture on the left is the current Aylesford newsprint site, bought by Panettone. They've got plans for £180 million development, and the picture on the right is the CGI of what it will actually look like when it's actually built out. So you've got a before and an after. And again, the picture there tells exactly the story and excites and shows the scale of the opportunity that that story has and what it can actually deliver. The other important thing to think about is know your audience in terms of the language that you're using within your press release. So if you're speaking industry to industry, you can use industry jargon, you can use industry terms, you can use industry, well, you're speaking to your peers, and so you can do that. However, if you're speaking as a business and you want to get to a local audience, you don't use industry speak. Avoid cliches, don't go for overblown claims. The number of times a journalist sees the word unique and the first thing he does is, or she does, is scratch it out, because nothing really is ultimately unique, apart from obviously my brown marmorated stink bug, which was unique. And it's all about the timing. So understand what the publication deadlines are, what the publication schedule is, when it's going to print, when it's going to publish. Think about that in light of the campaigns that you might want to do to promote your sales, to support your sales team, and ultimately reach out to your customers. So it's all about timing. So the other thing that works are case studies. And these are where you have the opportunity to say and tell people what you've done, who you've done it for, why it was important, why it was special, and what made it different. And ultimately, they give you an opportunity to get a client reaction, a testimonial. And you might say you're fantastic, but if your customer's saying you're fantastic, that's got a lot more credibility as it comes in as independent. You know, we all know, we go onto those websites and we look at reviews. We know that a lot of the reviews are not real. Well, we do now, we didn't a few weeks or months ago. But when you see a testimonial from company X about one of its suppliers, you do actually tend to listen and you do actually tend to read it. The other thing as well about case studies is it provides great content for your website. It also allows you to integrate it with your wider marketing, such as your social media channels, and it makes you real. It demonstrates that you do have a track record, you have experience in the marketplace, and you could be that trusted supplier that hopefully another company is looking to actually purchase from. The other areas that work are your newsletters, and these can be either printed or digital. Obviously, the challenge at the moment for anything in print is the fact that most of us are working from home, or actually sometimes it feels like we're living at work, to be honest, but we are working from home. But a digital email campaign can obviously be very, very targeted. They're not expensive. You just need to do it properly. And then, as I said before, you can integrate all your communications in with your social media channels, your LinkedIn channels, and everything else. And as I said, it's great content for your website and it keeps it fresh. So One of the areas that most people like to think they can do or would like to be is actually be an industry spokesperson. A person that the media goes to because, one, they are trusted. They're expert, they're erudite, they're able to speak on a subject from a position of knowledge and credibility. But to do that, you really have to have a comms plan. You have to be able to set out your stall, understand where your strengths are, what your core messages are. And fundamentally, it's about being realistic. You're not going to get picked up and be the go-to person on widget manufacturing for the Financial Times unless you are the world's leading widget manufacturer. And you've actually managed to make that track record and demonstrate that you've got that credibility. It's not going to come overnight, but it can be built. And we'd argue that one of the key things to building your profile is actually sending out targeted press releases and stories that, little and often, that they're not going to be, most companies think, oh, we've got to do something really big. But it's amazing how often I can be talking to a client and they'll just say, oh, and by the way, is this an interesting story? And you've got just a little nugget, a little gem that actually makes a press release in its own right, but isn't going to be front page news, but it will be page 3, 5, 7, or 9. The question you've got to ask yourself is, are you really an expert? Are you the expert on your particular industry, your sector, and what you do? And if you are, and you can justify it, you have a reason to talk to the media and explain from your perspective. One of the key things is, though, you've always got to expect the unexpected. If when you're talking to a journalist, it may be that you're just giving them a briefing and you're explaining to something, you've looked at a national agenda and you think, actually, there might be a Kent angle here, or there might be an industry angle here, and you can then speak to the press to give them a briefing. They then might say to you, okay, send me some information, send me some, can you back it up? And if you can't back it up, then you shouldn't have been speaking to in the first place, but you've got to be ready and therefore expect to be asked questions, expect to be asked for information, and therefore provide it. Because ultimately, just like it is with your relationship with your clients and your suppliers, it's about trust. And it's about building up the trust with industry, journalists, local press, trade press, whoever. But again, you're the expert, but you've got to know your audience. So don't overcomplicate it, keep it simple. And you don't have to say yes to every interview. Some of them, you can frequently, and just we advise quite a few clients, unless there's a real value in terms of building a long-term relationship or there's a commercial value in it, don't feel that you have to say yes. We'd always argue that it is always good for long-term relationships. You don't know where the conversation will start and finish in terms of that, but always, always, always think about your audience. And being helpful goes a long way. So it may be that a journalist is looking for something to back up a story and therefore is looking for information about the industry. If he picks up the phone or she picks up the phone, be helpful, and then you're then starting to build a relationship. A couple of cases in point. I think they're always used, as I said, case studies explain to people. We've been doing some work with Royal British Legion Industries, and again, it's about the weaving together of the stories. So not every business has got this, so not every business will be 100 years old, but they may have a milestone coming up. They may be 20, or in our case 25, they may be 50 or whatever. So think about your milestones. Think about where you come from and where you're going. We also had a project and they wanted to create a £21 million centenary village, and we're doing the fundraising. That gives an opportunity to then engage with the press. So when they got a £1 million donation or a £2 million donation, that then gave us an opportunity to send out a press release, to engage with the media and continue to tell the story. Industry partnerships, who are you working with? Again, with RBLI, they're working with Barrett's. So that gives them a very big national name. And that, again, gave an opportunity to engage with the trade press in terms of the construction press in a place that they probably hadn't been doing to promote what they do as RBLI in terms of pallets and signage. And then you've got Britain's bravest manufacturing company. And a human interest story linked to a business is always a good one. The benefit of obviously RBLI is, they have a reputation, they are a charity, a not-for-profit organisation, and they do some fantastic work. And it's those businesses that are really going to be interesting to the press. Here we have an example of a family business involved in construction, GSE Group. So with this, think about what have they been doing? So they've been investing in new equipment. That in itself is a story. That demonstrates commercial confidence in the future and in their business. So therefore, that's a news story. Picture on the left is the Ashford International Truck Stop. That's being built. It's been designed by Clegg. It's currently being built at Waterbrook Park to replace the existing one. And as we all know, lorry parks are interesting news at the moment and very topical. And therefore, you've got an opportunity to link this to, say, a national agenda. But they've also got plans at Waterbrook for developing it out in terms of design and build, spec units, etc. Talking about the master planning of specific sites and what they do. Equally so, it's about the team behind the scenes who are doing it, and recent management buyout, the transition of a business, the succession of a business from father to son, and senior management. These are all parts of a story that you can weave together as part of your business, that sometimes you're possibly too close to thinking about it because it's just an everyday event to you guys. But actually, new director, that's an appointment press release. New investment, that's a possible press release. All these things need to be brought together. And it's about creating timely news and noise, but noise that's going to be heard by your people that matter, i.e. your clients, your suppliers, your potential clients, and also, importantly, your staff. So there's also the realization that not every day goes according to plan. And there will always be people and there will always be businesses where mistakes happen, things go awry. However, there's absolutely no excuse in today's world not to be prepared for it. Just as you'll have a business continuity plan, or you should also have a crisis communications plan. And it doesn't need to be complicated. It needs to think about what are the threats, what are the scenarios that could hit your business that might have an impact on the reputation that you've fought very long and hard for over many, many years. Once you know the threats, you can then start to work out what response you would have and how you would manage those threats out. Sometimes it's quite difficult to have a conversation within either family business, a small business, or any size business, really, especially if you've got quite dominant characters. And so we'd always argue that taking impartial advice, we can be the giver, we can be the asker of the difficult question, we can be the giver of the hard news, the bad news, but also the impartiality of it all hopefully brings with it a degree of credibility. We can step back and ask those questions that you might not want to ask or find difficult to answer. The important thing as well in managing the negative is having somebody who is media savvy, media confident, and that requires someone to be briefed, probably media trained, and able to stand in front of a camera and stick to an agreed line. What often happens is you get people who have the briefings and then they become overconfident. They don't prepare properly. They walk into it thinking that, oh, it's all right, I can do this, I've had the training. The reality is you need to be briefed on the specifics. As we saw the other day when Mr. Johnson was asked about the lockdown criteria in Newcastle, you have to be across the brief. You have to know the facts and you have to be able to answer what is, to all intents and purposes, a fairly simple question. But at the end of the day, you are the expert on your business. You know what's going on in your businesses. But if you don't have a plan, then you're planning to fail. I know it's a cliche. I said don't use cliches in press releases, but fail to plan, you plan to fail. And my top tip, if you're in a skip fire, the phrase no comment to a journalist just does not work. It does not cut it. It is tantamount to saying, we're guilty. We got it wrong, and I'm not going to tell you why we got it wrong. I'm just going to say not comment. It does not work. And the other thing that you need to think about when protecting your reputation is you need to be quick, you need to be credible, you need to be solid in your response. and you need to think about how the news or the negative news will play out on your social channels and also in the media. And that requires you to be able to have comments prepared, even if it's only dummy comments, and reactive statements only to be used in the event of a media inquiry are something that we prepare for a lot of clients. And to be honest, there you have it. That's my whistle-stop tour to managing the positive, managing out the negative. And if you've got any questions, I'm happy to take them now. I'll take off sharing and.
Thank you, Andrew. Thank you very much indeed. So insightful. And I think the thing is for myself, and I'm sure many people on the stage will agree, understand the section where you said about understanding your audience and the timings and the tone in terms of your speech is so important with these sorts of things. I guess just one question that I did come in. Someone mentioned about social media. Would you advise not answering bad social media, or would you say, is that the same kind of rule that no comment is a bad comment?
I think you've got to be very careful with social media. It is one that can very quickly get out of hand, can be misinterpreted. Also, you've got to think about who are the people who are behind the social media as well. They are individuals, they're members of the public, they're not journalists, they don't have to publish and republish the facts. So dealing and having I suppose, a public debate in a social media forum when there's a negative involving your business is a very dangerous thing to do.
Yeah,
I would always err against that and use your other channels, such as your website or the media, to actually manage that out, to be honest. It's a lot safer.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you. Any other questions for Andrew? Seems very quiet, Andrew.
That's fine. I've obviously, rather asleep. There could be asleep.
No, I think you probably answered many of people's questions anyway as you were going along. But is there any questions? Kelly, got any questions?
I suppose I'd have a question for everyone. How many of you actively do proactive PR within your business? And is it? And I can ask the question why. If you don't do it, why not? Now it has gone quiet.
You have silenced everybody now, but Kelly's got a question, Angie, for you.
Okay.
Yeah. It's not so much of a question. It was actually a bit of knowledge that I found out the other day. It was when we had an event for Next Play, and just while we're on the subject of like social media, there's a link that you can go on to, and you can measure what your output is on LinkedIn and what response you're getting. It's called an SSI. So I don't know if everyone's got a pen and paper and wants to write this down. It's www.linkedin.com and /sales/SSI, and it will tell you the interaction you're getting with LinkedIn. And it also said about hashtags and things like that, and you should only kind of put 3 as a maximum on your hashtags to optimize.
We've advised quite a number of clients recently on growing their LinkedIn presence.
Yes.
It does take time, it takes effort, and you have to you have to work hard at it, but it does come back in spades in terms of reaping the reward. But you have to engage, and I'll hold my hands up. I'm not particularly good on it, but when you do it and you see the level of engagement you get back and how many people have responded and posted and all that, it does become quite, you get a bit of an endorphin hit, and that's quite nice. That's quite positive.
Well, I think moving forward, it's our shop windows, isn't it? It's walking down the high street, and that's not so visual at the moment. So I think it's really, really important.
It's also a lot less contentious in terms of the comments and the language that's used, the level of engagement. It is it is what it is. It's a lot more of a professional channel, because that's what it does. It's about people in work with careers, you know, talking and sharing information and best practice. And I think that's why it works. And that's why I would propose using that as your, you know, by all means, if you have a crisis, then use LinkedIn, because people, you know, hopefully the way that we always look at it in terms of business, within PR, is think of it as going to the bank on a fairly regular basis and making a deposit, and you're then in credit. So when the negative comes, you have to make a withdrawal. But at the end of the day, you're still hopefully got a positive balance, rather than having somebody who's not done any PR at all and all of a sudden has a negative, and they go to the bank and go, oh, I'm sorry, you're in overdraft. And it's think of it like that. So it's little and often, regular stories, and just get the word out there. But you have to know your audience, and you have to write in the right style.
Yeah, no, that's great. Thank you so much indeed, Andrew.